It started the day his ex-fiancée knocked on our door holding a baby that wasn't supposed to exist. I remember laughing, not because it was funny, but because the universe has a twisted sense of humor. Ethan's face went pale. Mine went cold. The baby, tiny and innocent, wailed like a siren announcing the end of our peace. Ethan, my lover, the man who once promised he'd burn the world to keep me safe, stood frozen, his past now crying in his arms. I should have left that moment, but I didn't, because love, as I've learned, doesn't always make you brave. Sometimes it makes you foolishly, painfully loyal. We met 2 years ago, a lawyer and a writer, two cliches who should have never collided. Ethan was the golden boy of Manhattan's legal scene. Sharp jawline, sharper tongue, the kind of man who could turn a courtroom into a stage. I was the opposite, a recluse publishing novels under a pen name, terrified of being seen. Our worlds clashed at a charity gala neither of us wanted to attend. He spilled champagne on my jacket. I called him a walking ego in a suit. He laughed loud, genuine, disarming. By the end of that night, we were sitting on the steps outside the Met, shoes off, sharing secrets that burned like whiskey. He told me he'd never been loved for who he was. I told him I'd never been brave enough to love anyone. Somehow we fixed each other, or at least we tried to. 2 years later, our apartment was filled with sunlight and coffee stains. Ethan would come home from court exhausted, loosen his tie, and collapse into my arms. I'd tease him for being dramatic. He'd call me his anchor. We were happy, not perfectly, but enough. Until that knock. Until her. Her name was Madeline, Ethan's ex, a memory he'd never spoken of. The moment I saw her, my heart twisted. She wasn't cruel. She was heartbreakingly calm. "This is Noah," she said, lifting the baby. "He's yours, Ethan." The silence that followed could have split the earth. I waited for Ethan to deny it, to laugh, to tell me it was impossible. But his face, his eyes, I saw guilt before he even opened his mouth. "It happened before us," he said softly. "Before you and me. Before us." Those words echoed in my chest like a verdict. I turned away before he could see the tears. For days, our apartment felt haunted by the sound of bottles clinking, the soft cries of the baby, the ghost of what we were. Ethan tried to explain, to bridge a gap that had grown wider than reason. I kept writing. About him. About us. About how love can be both sanctuary and prison. My publisher called, said the new novel was my best yet, raw, aching, real. I laughed bitterly. Of course it was. Pain always sells. Ethan spent nights pacing with Noah in his arms, learning how to be a father overnight. I watched him from the bedroom doorway, the man I loved holding a life that wasn't ours, humming lullabies under his breath. It should have been beautiful, but it hurt like hell. He was everything I ever wanted, loyal, gentle, strong, yet now he was divided. Between his past and our present. Between who he used to be and who I needed him to become. "Liam," he whispered one night, voice trembling. "Say something. Anything." "What do you want me to say, Ethan? That it's fine? That I'm okay watching you raise a child with a woman you used to love?" He flinched, like my words were bullets. "It's not like that," he said. "She doesn't want me. She just can't do this alone." "And you?" I asked. "Can you do this without losing me?" He didn't answer. That silence told me everything. A week later, Madeline left for California, a job, a new life, maybe a clean slate. She left Noah behind, tucked in Ethan's arms, with a note. "He deserves better than I can give." Ethan held that note for hours. Then, finally, he looked at me and said, "We'll figure this out. Together." But together felt fragile now, like glass ready to shatter. I wanted to believe him. God, I did. But every time I looked at that child, all I saw was a reminder of how easily love can be rewritten by fate. Still, I tried. I helped with feedings, changed diapers, even sang once badly. Ethan laughed, and for a moment, it almost felt like before. But late at night, when the city went quiet, I'd find myself staring at my reflection, wondering if I was strong enough to love a man who came with history I could never erase. Love wasn't supposed to be this complicated. And yet, it was real. Ethan was patient. Too patient. He'd sit beside me on the couch, holding Noah, his eyes pleading for a future I wasn't sure I could promise. "You don't have to stay," he said once, voice barely above a whisper. I'd understand. I wanted to scream at him to tell him I didn't want to understand. I wanted to believe. But all I managed was, "I'm still here, aren't I?" And I was, even when it broke me. The day Noah called me Dada, Ethan cried. I froze. Every instinct told me to run, that I didn't deserve that word, that it belonged to someone else. But when Ethan looked at me, his eyes full of hope and fear and love, something inside me shifted. Maybe family wasn't about blood. Maybe it was about choosing again and again, even when the world said you shouldn't. 3 months later, the world we'd rebuilt started to crack again, not from within this time, but from the outside. Ethan's name was everywhere. Headlines, news feeds, whispered rumors in courthouse halls. Star lawyer under investigation for conflict of interest. The case he'd been defending, a corporate fraud scandal, suddenly turned on him. Someone leaked documents implying that Ethan had been biased in court. Because of me. Because one of the companies involved had funded my latest book tour. It wasn't true. But the damage was instant. Paparazzi outside our door. Hate mail. Reporters shouting, "Is it true your boyfriend influenced your case, Mr. Blake?" Ethan tried to smile through it. "They'll forget in a week," he said. But his hands trembled when he said it. They didn't forget. The Bar Association opened an inquiry. Ethan was suspended, pending review. Overnight, the man who lived for the courtroom, who thrived on logic and control, became a ghost in his own skin. He stopped shaving, stopped sleeping. Every sound from Noah's crib made him flinch. I did what I could, wrote articles, called contacts, tried to protect him the way he once protected me. But every door I knocked on slammed shut. No one wanted to help the disgraced lawyer and his secret boyfriend. That word boyfriend had never been a weapon before. Now it was headline poison. One night, after Noah finally fell asleep, Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. "I worked my whole life for this," he said quietly. "For the name, the career, the respect. And now it's gone because I loved you." The words pierced deeper than he meant them to. "You think loving me ruined you?" I whispered. He looked up, eyes wet. "No, but it ruined everything else." I wanted to fight back, to remind him that we were everything. But all I felt was a weight pressing on my chest, the kind that love alone couldn't lift. Days turned to weeks. Ethan's father called, the man who'd never accepted him, never accepted us. He offered help on one condition: that Ethan clean up his image. Meaning leave me. I overheard the call, heard Ethan's silence, heard him say, "I can't," and that broke me more than if he'd said yes. Because love like that, stubborn, honest, meant he'd lose everything else. That night, while he slept, I sat at my desk and opened a blank page. The title came first, "The Weight of What We Choose." Then I started writing. Our story, the truth, the fear, the courage. How love between two men wasn't a sin, but a quiet rebellion against a world that demanded we apologize for it. I wrote until my fingers bled on the keys. When it was done, I sent it anonymously to The New Yorker. A week later, it went viral. People didn't know our names, but they knew our pain. They called it a love letter from the shadows. They debated, cried, and for once the comments weren't cruel. They were human. "Whoever wrote this," one said, "reminded me that love doesn't need permission." Ethan read it 3 times before realizing it was ours. He didn't say a word, just pulled me into his arms and whispered, "You saved me." Maybe I did. Maybe I just reminded him that he was worth saving. 2 months later, the investigation cleared him. Lack of evidence. No wrongdoing. But Ethan didn't go back to his old firm. He turned down every offer. Instead, he opened a small legal clinic, free consultations for LGBTQ+ clients, single parents, immigrants. People who can't afford to be believed, he said. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. I watched him every morning, kissing Noah's forehead before leaving for work, and I realized something. This was the man he was always meant to be. Not the courtroom star, the fighter, the father, the man who chose love when the world turned its back. The years that followed were quieter, softer. My books sold better than ever, though most readers never knew who I really was. Ethan became a voice for those who had none. And Noah, our little miracle of chaos and laughter, grew up between us, with more love than any secret could hide. Once, during an interview, a journalist asked Ethan if he regretted anything. He smiled that crooked, gentle smile that still undid me every time and said, "Regret? No. Love gave me everything I didn't know I needed." On our 5th anniversary, we drove to the same park where we first sat together after Madeline left. The trees were gold again, the air full of that bittersweet scent of fall. Noah ran ahead, chasing leaves. Ethan slipped his hand into mine. His ring brushed my skin, simple, silver, worn. "Do you ever think about how it started?" he asked. "Every day," I said, "and how close I came to losing it." He looked at me, eyes soft. "You never lost it. You just had to find a new way to believe." We sat there in silence, watching our son laugh under the fading sun. The world around us had changed, but somehow so had we. Stronger, softer, still a little scarred, but whole. Later that night, after Noah fell asleep, I asked him, "If you could go back before the scandal, before the baby, before everything, would you still choose me?" He didn't hesitate. Every time, I laughed through the tears. "Even if it cost you everything?" He kissed my forehead. "It didn't cost me everything, Liam. It gave me everything that mattered." And in that moment, surrounded by quiet, by love, by the small heartbeat of the family we never planned but built anyway, I realized something simple, something true. Love doesn't survive in perfection. It survives in chaos, in forgiveness, in the choice to stay. The next morning, I watched Ethan and Noah in the kitchen, Ethan pretending to burn pancakes, Noah giggling uncontrollably. Sunlight streamed through the window, catching in Ethan's hair, turning it to gold. I thought of the man I first met, polished, proud, terrified to be seen. And the man he was now, messy, grounded, endlessly kind. The same man, just finally free. I picked up my notebook and wrote one last line. We were two men who weren't supposed to find each other, but we did. And that was enough. Outside, the city woke up, cars, sirens, life. Inside, the three of us stood at the window watching it all unfold. Ethan's arm wrapped around my waist, Noah's tiny hand in mine. And for the first time, I didn't feel hidden anymore. We weren't a secret. We were a story. And we were finally home. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.